does most of the power for the village.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Sounds good.
a neat little part of the world.
And there's no shortage of knives, is there?
Well, now there are, because the knife factories are all gone. So
Oh,
can't get
okay.
anything over here.
Oh,
There's no shortage of mosquitoes, I can tell you that.
really? Okay.
Oh, plenty of those. I'm right next to my pond. I don't know if you can see it behind me, but it's very beautiful, but it's a breeding ground for larvae.
Would you be calling that Walden Pond?
Oh yes, that's the name of my Airbnb on Walden Pond.
Stream is live according to Suncast. So let me go put that out there in different places. All right, where is it? There it is. Like and share. Okay. And let me go to my feed. Come on. There we go. Stand by. Share this to my page. TWiRT. It's going to make me switch to it. How's that? Gotcha. Okay. Let's see if that posted. Yes, it did. Let me go back to my page and put this to the broadcasting club. Share to a group. Broadcasting club. Post. Okay, good deal. It is the top of the hour. It's going to be an interesting show. I don't know if it's going to be boring or exciting or informative or a couple of guys who don't know what the hell they're talking about. At least one of us may not know what he's talking about. That would be me.
I can very colors. I have some strong opinions on it.
Well, good. Strong opinions are very helpful. All right, good deal. All right. Well, I think we're ready to go here. I've got my what am I drinking today? This is last night's leftover lemonade and a 5-hour energy drink mixed together.
Ooh,
so,
sounds delicious. Yum.
You know, I put a 5-hour energy drink in the microwave. I was Superman for 12 seconds.
You got a few drinks they have over in Thailand. Those are my favorite. I had one called White Tiger. I was up for 3.
Still getting some glitches, but we'll try to soldier through. All right.
Let me see if I can move back a little bit.
Okay.
That might help.
All right. We're ready to start here. Hey, are you good for now?
Yep.
Okay. All right, I'm going to start the show here. It is a couple minutes after 4 in the Central Time Zone, 5 in the Eastern. Hey, we're getting ready to do episode 755 of This Week in Radio Tech. It's a Thursday before a holiday Friday, and that means everybody has left work except for me and Andy Gladding, and maybe you. Chris Tarr may be joining us. We will see if he comes in. And so we're gonna quit showing you the sausage being made, and we're just gonna go ahead and sell you some salchicha. Here we go in 3, 2. Hey, welcome into This Week in Radio Tech, the show where we talk about everything from the microphone to that light bulb at the top of the tower. Hello, I'm Kirk Harnack. I'm so glad that you've joined us. We do this show every week, or almost every week, probably get 51 shows out every year in a 52 Thursday year. And we've been doing it for about 16 years now. It's This Week in Radio Tech. We cover technical topics. We cover technical controversies when they are worth talking about. And sometimes we cover talent and other things, studio design, workflow, things like that. And today we've got what I think is kind of maybe a bit of a patriotic topic, and that has to do with the freedoms that we have in the broadcasting realm, in the broadcasting area in the United States, because it's the day before the 4th of July. Tomorrow we'll be celebrating a big, some anniversary. I forget how many years it is. I guess I should know. Is it 249? I don't know. 249, according to my producer in my ear. Boy, he makes me sound smart. Thank you, son guest. So that's what we're talking about, broadcasting rules and freedoms here in the U.S., and we're going to compare and contrast that with some rules and freedoms, or maybe lack of freedoms, in some other places around the world. So we'll get to that in a moment. I'm in the Telos Alliance studio here in Nashville, Tennessee. Thanks a lot to Telos for giving me a couple hours off on Thursdays to do the show and talk with you. All right, let's bring in our guest. I've got a guest here who I'm just delighted because he's got international broadcasting experience, a pretty fair amount of it, and that's Dr. Andy Gladding. Dr. Gladding, good to see you. How are you?
Good to see you too, sir. It's a wonderful opportunity to spend the day before a very wonderful, great, and much celebrated company holiday with you today.
Company holiday. Let's see. So you are you still working with Salem in New York City?
Oh, I sure am. I was
Okay,
actually
okay.
just at Salem this morning, taking care of some transmitter things, and I always like to do a little free air conditioning check, before a holiday weekend, especially if I'm going to be going out of town, which I am. And when I say going out of town, I'm talking about going to the faraway land of Pennsylvania to go visit my wife and some friends. But you don't want to get those alarms while you're relaxing and having a few adult beverages, because that's not going to be good for anybody. And so I want to make sure the alarms are clear before I leave the tri-state area.
You know, they say if you want to get something done, give it over to a busy man. And you certainly have a lot of hats. You have a lot of hats these days. Wow. Tell us just a little bit more about Andy. The last time we talked to you, what did we interview you at the Salem stations in New York City?
You sure did.
Yeah. Yeah, and since then, but you've since purchased a radio station yourself in New York State, right? Or is it in Connecticut?
So the city of license is Connecticut, but the station is entirely in the state of New York. It's in that weird little part of around the border where the buses don't run. So the studios are in Red Hook, and then there's a transmitter out up on a beautiful hill in Millerton, New York, a nice big high hill, as I like to say. And then we have a little translator that came with it, which is just outside the village of Red Hook in the town of Milan, or Milan, as the locals would say. I keep screwing that up. Yep. So, but it's been kind of an adventure doing all this stuff. I jokingly say to my wife, it's just all radio all the time, which can be a good or bad thing, I guess, depending on if it's profitable or not. We'll see.
Are you still doing some professoring at Hofstra?
Yes, the timing on this couldn't be better because right now we're in our summer break from Hofstra, so my duties there are keeping the Hofstra radio station on the air, which I'm happy to say, as my last check, which was yesterday, is all happy and greens across. I shouldn't even say that because now that I've said it, everything's going to go catastrophically wrong for me this weekend.
I know.
You know how that goes. But yeah, so we keep the station moving and grooving through the summertime, and it's great to have. Our WRHU is a wonderful place because even when we're not in session and we're not having the semester, the station still runs and functions 24/7, and we've got community programming being distributed, and we still have students that are manning the boards and manning the phones and making radio. So the excitement never ends over there. There's always something happening at WRHU. It's a great place to be.
Well, Andy, when I thought about this topic, because of the closest to the 4th of July we're facing right here, starting in a few hours, I thought, what a good time to talk about the freedoms or the relative freedoms, or maybe lack in a couple areas of freedoms in broadcasting in the USA, and contrast that with some other countries. And I'm no legal expert in other countries' broadcasting. I've got a few crib notes here, but I have been to a number of other countries and just kind of seen how they operate. You, on the other hand, have studied broadcasting in other countries, a few other countries, to some depth and degree. And so that's going to be the stage upon which today's program will be set. We're gonna try to count our blessings, but see what we can learn from other countries, if we can learn something, and maybe push for appropriate regulation and appropriate freedoms here in the USA. So all that is to wet everybody's whistle as to what's coming up. But Andy, we got to take our first quick break of the show. And I want to mention that our friends at AIR, AIIR.com, we've been talking quite a bit about their streaming offerings, and they still have that $20 a month, but they're rolling out something new, and right now it's free if you want to try it. And then when you got to pay for it, when the promotion ends, it's pretty reasonable in its pricing. It is it has to do with music scheduling, and they ask, are you tired of wrestling with clunky music scheduling software? Well, they'd like you to meet AIR's Music Scheduler. It's powerful scheduling simplified right in your browser. Now, with drag and drop clocks, reusable templates, you can build a day's playlist or an entire month, and you can do that literally in minutes. You can import your existing library, or you can start fresh and then assign categories, commands, and audio with lightning speed. The cloud-based platform frees you to schedule from anywhere. You don't have to be sitting at your desk at the radio station. You can schedule any time. Oh, I forgot to schedule for next Tuesday. And you can just jump right in from wherever you are and do that. No installation, no software installation, no headaches, and with fully customizable rules for artist separation, tempo flow, title thresholds, and more. You'll always hit your station's unique sound. That's what they know about at AIR. They're good at this. You can see issues highlighted in real time. You can get instant fix suggestions, and you can export logs effortlessly into Playout One, of course, Wide Orbit, into Myriad, into Play It Live, Station Playlist, and the list is growing. Try AIR Music Scheduler absolutely free through September of this year. And after that, it's $60 a month per station. Ready to simplify your scheduling? Visit AIR, that's AIIR.com/scheduler. Or you can just go to AIR.com's main page and hit the button for music scheduling and sign up today. I love the fact that it's web-based. You can do it from anywhere. Hey, you're out and about and you've got your tablet. Easy to connect. You can do it from a Chromebook. I mean, it's easy to connect and get it done. Thanks, AIR, AIIR.com, for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. All right, man about the world. Let's think about the United States. I'm just going to wet our whistle.
Well, before we
talk
about that real quick, I could actually talk about AIR, not to give AIR another continuous plug, but I'm actually in the process of getting my scheduling upstate at 98.1 moved over to AIR, and it's been incredibly seamless. The team has been extremely supportive. Ricky, I think you built our good buddy Ricky Lee. I think you built a pretty amazing product here. And I'm looking forward to getting this live, which I think is going to be in about a week or so, and seeing what AIR and Playout can do. So we'll have some real world feedback to give back to you about that.
Well, good. Glad to hear of your experience, and I'm not surprised. We've had we've had some hardware issues with our Playout One system. Not their fault, our fault. And as soon as we get the hardware fixed, which we did, as soon as we get it fixed, emailed them, and within hours they've totally rebuilt the server remotely, and it's just amazing the kind of stuff they do. All right, so Andy, let's kind of first dish on the United States, and I'm going to give some just general thoughts about radio broadcasting in the U.S. In the U.S., it's kind of a low barrier to entry. Now, I say that, and some people, I remember congressional hearings maybe 15, 18 years ago, when people were complaining, it costs so much to get a radio station. How can I? And they, Clear Channel wants to sell a station for $20 million. Look, if you want to buy, let's say, a gas station, and you want to buy it on the Strip in Las Vegas, you're not going to be able to afford it. Okay? That takes big money. But if you want to buy a gas station in West Undershirt, Arkansas, it's going to be affordable. So radio broadcasting, buying a station is very similar. I'm part owner of a number of stations in pretty small markets. And the reason was because we could build them literally using a credit card to put a station together and put it on the air. So in the U.S., we generally have a rather low barrier to entry. Individuals, nonprofits, and businesses can apply for an AM or FM license in available markets, or as more common, you're going to buy an existing license, since most of the licensable areas are taken up. In the U.S., you have editorial freedom. You can say and do almost whatever you want on the airwaves. And then there's a diversity of ownership models in the U.S. for low power, for nonprofit groups, for churches, for ethnic groups, serving an ethnic community, for people who just want to get in and try to make money. They're going to play what people want to hear and sell commercials for the highest available price. So, Andy, given that kind of a setup, and maybe you've got more to set up, what are your thoughts about generally the essence, the environment, the atmosphere of broadcasting in the United States?
Well, I think you kind of hit the nail right on the head, Kirk. The structure was really designed to provide access across the board. Getting in there, I think the difficult piece that people don't really take into consideration is, as being a part of an ownership group and also being involved in this business, it's not so much getting the station, the buying of the station. If you just show up with a suitcase full of money, yeah, you can buy a radio station. You can get an attorney and you can get the license transferred over. The challenge is finding the purpose of the station. Some people, I think, buy stations because they can and they kind of want to live out a dream of never having been a program director or music director or being a DJ. And suddenly they come into some money and they're like, oh, I'm going to buy a local station. This will be fun. I guess that's one way to do it. Other community groups that buy stations, they have a mission or a purpose. Universities, obviously, their own stations are hopefully utilizing those assets for training purposes. But I think that the way that the system is set up, it really is accessible if you go about it for the right reasons. I think the worst thing you can do is try to enter ownership when you don't have a clear objective, and it really starts with having that conversation with yourself. Why am I doing this? What do I hope to get out of it? I think most local operators discover really quickly that this is not a numbers game to try to get rich real quick. That's probably not why you're buying a local station. I think if you're doing it for the right reasons, it can be extremely rewarding. And the system that has been put, it tends to, I think, favor that kind of mindset. You do have to have the ability to find the right legal protection. You need to be able to navigate the FCC database. You need to be able to then operate the station. I mean, it's great. You bought it. Now, what do you do with it? And how do you keep it on the air? So I think at this point, the system's appropriate and it seems to be working the way it was intended.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I was just thinking back to our first hour, me and Larry Fuss and a couple other business partners. Our first acquisition, our first radio station that we all bought together was an AM/FM combo in Cleveland, Mississippi. And here was the financing. Now, this was back in the early 90s, like 1992 or 3. The financing was, the price of the station was $40,000. Okay, not much. $40,000. Now this was 32 years ago, but $40,000 owner financed. It was Andy. It was $100 down with a balloon payment in 4 years of $39,900.
Whoa! I want you to get me that deal. That's great.
Well, obviously, the seller was motivated because the station hadn't made money in some years. He was an out-of-town owner, out-of-state owner. And so it was a bad situation. But we thought, hey, this is a growing little town. There's a 4-year university in this town. It's kind of the jewel of the Delta, as the town is known. That's maybe not saying a lot, but the town is full of a lot of good people. And so we bought it, and hey, back in those days, we didn't have too much trouble paying the bills and turning a small profit. It's actually tougher now, but so my point was, we bought studio equipment, some of it used, some new, on credit cards. I guess what I'm saying is the low barrier to entry. A lot of folks don't believe that. And like I said earlier, if you want to buy a Las Vegas radio station, I'm sorry, you're going to have deep pockets and maybe be a big corporation to do that. But if you want to buy a radio station where you can be part of the community and start out right-sized for you, for your career in broadcast ownership, probably you can do it. There are plenty of stations for sale. There's some stations where they're just turning them off right now, sad to say. So what's been your either your personal experience or what have you seen in terms of being able to get into the broadcasting business for not a lot of money?
Well, I wouldn't say it wasn't for not a lot of money, but I would it was a reasonable price in a market that I felt was is it has a lot of potential. Uh,
Hmm.
WKZE is very unique in the fact that it has a great signal. Like I said, earlier, the tower's up on a nice high hill. It's not the highest point, it's not the lowest point, but it's got good coverage. The Hudson Valley market, in my opinion, has not really even come close to reaching its full potential.
Oh,
And I have a lot of history in that area, even though I'm not from the Hudson Valley, but I've spent a lot of time up there over the last 20 years, so I'm extremely familiar with the market. And my wife, Katie, is a Marist graduate, which is over in Poughkeepsie. So when the
yeah.
deal came around, it felt like the right deal because it was an area that we were very comfortable with doing business in. I was already doing some things up there with some property ownership and things like that. So I knew the terrain. We were aware of I think just knowing the topography, the physical topography of where you are makes a lot of sense. Where does the signal go? Where are the communities physically? Where are your salespeople going? Things like that. So it was an understanding of the geography and the topography that it was made this a little less scary because it's like, well, at least I kind of know where this is and where all the pieces of the puzzle are. What I found is that so far anyway is embracing the existing structure of the station's format has been incredibly helpful. I know a lot of owners go in, they want to immediately put their stamp on it, change things, and make this sort of like the execution of their dream. But you have
Uh-huh.
to remember that there are listeners that are part of the station. They're part of the station's fabric. They're promoting the station without you having to pay them. They like listening to it. They like being a part of what that brand is. It means a lot to them. It's part of their soundtrack of their daily life. If you go in and you remove that from them, you're going to lose those listeners and you lose that word of mouth. Katie and I have discovered that by protecting the station and just looking to see where we can make small adjustments here and there, I think has worked out a lot better. We have the transition from the previous ownership from the Stanley family, Barbara Stanley and her late husband Will, has been relatively smooth. And I think we've been very fortunate that the staff has been forthcoming with us about things that they feel are important. We've been able to share our insight coming from a larger media market and some of our experience working for New York City media and bringing the things that we know work to the table. So it's been a really wonderful relationship going both ways. But I think keeping that the element of and the idea of respecting the station and respecting the community around the station is really the key to being successful here. Because if you demonstrate that kind of respect to the listeners and to the advertisers, I'm pretty confident that it will come back in most circumstances.
Hey, you said something that really made me think about fences. You said, hey, you don't want to just come in and blow up a format until maybe you understand why the format is there. And you coming in as a new owner may not think it's worthwhile, but at least consider formats are like fences. Don't tear down a fence until you understand why it's there. And
Correct.
yeah,
Correct.
don't tear up a format until you understand why it was like that. Now, then you're fine if you still think you need to change it. But realize what you just said. You got longtime listeners who are going to cry, moan, and complain probably.
Well, yeah, and we have been very very careful about the changes we've been making. I think that what was first of all, I happen to like the format of WKZE. I was familiar with the station before we went into it. I knew a couple of people that worked there. I had performed on the station a couple of years ago with one of my friends, and I remember thinking to myself, "Hey, this is a cool little funky place right here. This is like a neat little spot. It's right on a main street, in the village of Red Hook, which is a beautiful village, kind of like has a very New Englandy small town feel to it, and I'm very familiar with that from growing up. That was kind of where I grew up in Long Island in Northport, so I
Yeah.
recognized a lot of things that I was familiar with, even though it was in a different place. But the music format is very unique in the fact that it has been curated. They have a history, a 20-year history, even more than that, actually, of having a sort of eclectic AAA format, which includes a lot of Americana, a lot of stuff you would hear on a larger market station like WFUV. Your standard AAA hits. Your Elvis Costello and your Connor Oberst. But then there's also things that are germane to the area. That they play a lot of local bands, local musicians, and the people that are doing the programming, namely Rick Schneider, and who's the morning show host, and MK Scully, who's the afternoon host. They have a really interesting way of kind of selecting music. So I look at that and I say, well, these guys are getting paid to curate. So why am I going to come into their market and tell them like what they need to be doing when it comes to the guide when they're clearly doing a pretty good job of generating something that's unique. Obviously, I have my own thoughts about it. We've, again, those gentle nudges or adjustments, but nothing's been overwhelmingly like, you have to do this. There's no iron fist or hammer coming down. It's more like, hey, why don't we try a few things out? And that's been really nice because the station has an intact core format that we've been able to work with, push the edges of the envelope a little bit, and actually ask the listeners, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And the listeners have been very forthcoming with their feedback. At the same time, we've also found that by adding some gentle additions of programming, we've found new listeners that have come into the station. So instead of me saying, I want to change the programming to bring my programming to the listeners, I want the new listeners to come in to the now tapestry of programming that we're generating on KZE. And so far, it's been going really well.
All right. Well, tell you what, we're going to take a break. But Andy, when we come back, there's one follow-up question I have while we're still talking about USA, and then we're going to look at some other countries. Just a quick overview of how broadcasting public-private works in countries like Italy, Poland, Indonesia, Australia, Canada, Venezuela, South Africa, Rwanda, maybe Saudi Arabia, and Ireland. Mongolia is an interesting one. So we're going to look just briefly as to how those countries tend to regulate what goes on the airways or what they don't regulate, just how free or how unfree they are. But Andy, when we come back, the first question I'm going to have for you has to do with what are you guys teaching at Hofstra and what are you practicing at your radio stations and what do you see at other stations about freedom to say what you want, editorialize? Are you, when you do editorialize, are you in any danger of backlash, either possibly from a government entity or from listeners? So I just want to cover that so we can then contrast it with other countries. I'm Kirk Harnack. It's This Week in Radio Tech. It's our 755th episode. Glad that you've joined us, and we're kind of celebrating the freedoms that we have in broadcasting in the United States. Our show is brought to you in part by Broadcast Bionics, and Bionics has made it easier for you to implement virtualized broadcast infrastructure. And what does that mean? Is it important to you? I tell you what, it is important to you because the days of buying a box and screwing in the rack and plugging some XLRs in the back of it, those days are waning. Trust me, those days are waning. Hey, 15 years ago, I told you that your POTS lines were going away. And now there's parts of the country you can't get them at all. You can, and if your POTS lines dies, too bad. Well, Broadcast Bionics has figured out how to make virtualizing different pieces of broadcast infrastructure like audio mixing consoles or phone systems for on air or audio processing or codecs, how to make that easy. Really just pick an app, install it, license it, and off you go. You set the IP addresses and the way you go. The product is called Virtual Rack. Virtual Rack, you can have your entire air chain, if you want, in one place, or you can back it up with a backup system from Broadcast Bionics. What they've done is they've taken all the difficult part of installing containerized software, and they've automated that. And they've tested it over and over and over again. They even gave it to my colleagues at Telos Alliance to test. And oh my goodness, it works just really well. It's kind of like an app store. You get the Virtual Rack appliance. You turn it on, you browse into it, and look, there's different manufacturers. If you're looking at your screen right now, different manufacturers like Ferncast, Sound4, Telos Alliance, 2WCOM. You choose one of those manufacturers, then you choose the software that you want. Maybe you want some codecs from 2WCOM, or maybe you want some processing and codecs together from Sound4, or maybe you want audio processing or a mixing console or an on-air phone system, even a sophisticated one from Telos Alliance. You can have any of these things you want. You click a button, it installs typically in under 2 minutes. Give it IP addresses, set up a few Livewire or AES67 channels for audio in and out over the network. And hey, some of these programs work out of the box, at least in a demo mode, and then you can license them from their respective manufacturer. You can deploy, you've got failover options, and you've got just a number of cool applications. Plus, the Virtual Rack handles the stuff that normally you'd maybe need an IT person to do. Handles, hey, did I install too much stuff? It won't let you. Do I want to have hot failover, hot backup, hot swap? That's available too. Hey, on this page, as you can see on the screen right now, there are some videos explaining virtual rack. Dan McQuillan is the genius behind this effort. He's got a whole whole slew of developers, programmers there at Broadcast Bionics, and they have made this a wonderfully easy lift for you, people like you and me, to install. Please check this out. Go to bionics.co.uk and check out Virtual Rack. It's really amazing, and you can buy it from your favorite dealer in virtually whatever country that you're in. Thank you, Broadcast Bionics. Thank you, Dan McQuillan, for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech and making such useful infrastructure for us. All right. Andy Gladding is our guest. Andy has a doctorate, and he's all about broadcasting, teaching it hands-on and classroom, and also operating a radio station himself, and being a director of engineering for a big New York radio station. So, my goodness, I think he's got all the bases covered. Andy, thinking about what you teach in terms of content or content regulation, what can you, should you not, can you not do on the air in the United States? And then we'll kind of look at how that compares with other countries. What do you think?
Well, first of all, I'm not sure if you noticed, Kirk, I had to move because I was sitting outside. It suddenly started pouring raining.
Oh my gosh! Oh, I'm sorry.
I've moved to my mobile studio, which literally is my Jeep. So if you hear a noise, that's there's a tsunami happening right around me right now. But yes, it's a good question that you ask. I think that right now we've been doing a really big push on making sure students at Hofstra and WRHU understand broadcast standards and practices of obviously creating and making audio and now video, because now video is a part of radio, that is it looks good, it sounds good, it's easy to deliver, but it's also keeping in mind that there is a greater scrutiny happening among things that go out over the air. We've seen recently that there have sort of tricky challenges to, I guess, what we would usually consider to be First Amendment protections to content. Look, there's been a number of lawsuits recently that have had mixed results in terms of their outcomes, and it's landed some of the larger broadcast companies in hot water. Some of these things have been politically motivated. So we are now kind of reminding the students when it comes to the public airspace to be very careful about making sure that they're following things to the letter, they're keeping their standards intact, and also looking towards providing information with the objectivity of keeping the information intact. You know, it's very easy to add your own personal flavor or spin to things when you're feeling passionate about it. And I know we've all seen things go over the air, whether it's places that we work or channels that we're watching, and it makes us it evokes emotion. Sometimes that emotion's good emotion, sometimes it's not. But I've always found for myself personally, it's important to separate the job from yourself. You know, your position as a broadcaster, especially as an engineer, is to get the content out over the air, whether you agree with it or not. And I think that's a philosophy we've tried to enforce to the students that look, whether this is something that you like or you don't like, if you're on the BO and E side, the objectivity is to get it out and get it delivered in the highest quality possible. You can figure out what your feelings are about it later, but really, you're here to make sure that the job gets done. And that's something we've been trying to really instill, in our program to make sure that again, there's no compromise in the quality of the product.
Do you work with talent to? Because I think one of the most effective things you can do in broadcasting is to evoke thought and conversation and thinking about a topic. Let's say you've got a hot topic, something that's in the news. Maybe it's controversial, maybe it's not so controversial, but I think a talented broadcaster, it may or may not be his job to tell you what to think, but just to help you work through it. Hey, maybe your friends are saying this, but maybe you also ought to consider this. This appears to be a real factor. Anyway, do you have any thoughts about teaching talent to help the listeners, help their audience to think about topics themselves?
Absolutely, objectivity is everything. And when you're just starting out at your career, and I look at college students, they really are starting out. Their career begins the minute that they open that microphone and reach a a mass audience, and it's just being done at a university radio station. So we want to teach that objectivity early and make sure that they're really focusing on that and not getting buried in the semantics of it. And it's very difficult to express that to to a 17 or 18-year-old, but yet it's part of our job. You can make sure that they're taking those lessons home. So it's very important that I think that we remind them of our own dedication to the craft, to the quality of the craft, as opposed to inserting our own objectivity into it.
Andy, I think your weather may be getting even worse. Sorry for presenting it this way, but there's Walden right about in the middle, and you've got some yellow and red just about upon you.
I'm not sure if you noticed the hail that's falling on my car right now or the lightning in the background.
No.
It's actually quite bad. I'm letting him in my car.
Oh my goodness! Well, yeah, okay. If you feel a need to take cover somewhere else, do so. We can carry on, or we can finish the show another time. Let's turn our attention.
There's a structure to my left. I can always go right into it.
We'll end up returning to the United States to count our blessings, but let's look at a few other countries now. Italy. I was under the impression, maybe it's true, maybe it's not, that Italy was just kind of a free for all. Like, you pay Uncle Nunzio a little bit of money, he hands it to the government, you get a license, you throw an antenna on the roof of your apartment building, you turn the transmitter on, and you can broadcast. And this was part of the problem, is they had thousands of essentially sort of semi-licensed pirate broadcasters. Now, I know there also is very professional state level and maybe even large corporation broadcasting. Italy is described as regulated pluralism and public service. Radio in Italy is governed by AGCOM under the AVMS code, which is a decree from 2021. Broadcasters must hold concessions or general authorizations, and quotas ensure both public sector RAI and private stations can coexist. Do you know anything additional about broadcasting in Italy?
I can tell you from my experience over in Italy. First of all, I'm the kind of guy, when I go away on vacation, I love to try to check out a radio station, and I've done that all over the world. Italy is the most difficult place to try to get access to a community radio station because, let's face it, if you're living in Italy, the hours of operation for business can vary greatly. Companies sort of open around 9 o'clock, more like 10. And then there's that 3-hour lunch break where you have to go and you have wine and you sit have a meal. And then the doors open again around 3, but maybe not. Depends if the family comes over. Then you end up closing early for the day. And then everybody goes out for dinner at like 10 o'clock at night. You stay up till 1 in the morning drinking wine. So it's kind of an interesting place to do business. And the broadcasters over there, you're correct, they do have a kind of a different feel to them. What I can say that I did notice over there, which I thought was really impressive, is that their DAB system is incredible. I mean, you could take a station with you. You could take a station and pack a lunch with that station and drive from one end of the region to the other, and you're getting that station on DAB the whole way. It's really cool, and that DAB broadcast will follow you, as you kind of move along region to region. And of course, this was prior to my wife Katie becoming a partner with me at the WKZ upstate. And I'm sitting there talking about how astonishing this is, and she's looking at me like, "Yeah, weirdo. Okay, you keep talking about your silly whatever you're talking about. I can't even." She's like, don't even know what you mean when you say DAB." And on our last visit, it was a different conversation. Now as she's entering station ownership, she's like, "Well, how does that work, and why are they able to carry the signals so far along?" So you will find that those larger government operated stations or government regulated stations really do have quite a significant reach and signal through the DAB channel. It just goes forever, and it's really impressive.
That's interesting. I'd love to come back to that. But tell you what, why don't we go to a country where I believe you got some recent experience, and that's I think it's South Africa. Weren't you in South Africa or dealing with some stations there?
Absolutely. We took a group of 5 broadcasters down to Cape Town to visit a radio station called Bush Radio, and I've had a relationship with Bush Radio for about 4 years. Maybe going on maybe longer than that, maybe about 5 or 6 years now. And again, it started just by me being on vacation. I walked into the Bush radio station after giving them a tap on Facebook. I walk in the door and I said, "Hey, I'm Andy. I'm here from New York. I'd like to your radio station. And the gentleman there, his name was Adrian, who was the station's program director, looks at me like an alien had just walked through the door. Like, what are you doing here? What? New York, why did you come to our community station? And let me tell you something, Kirk. These guys really have it down. Community radio in South Africa provides an essential service in a way that we have, I'm not going to say forgotten about in the United States, but we're not using radio the same way. We forget that South Africa doesn't have the same penetration of broadband that we have in the US. So their broadband service is not as reliable, especially in rural areas, or in many cases, it's non existent. You've also got a class of population that really can't afford to have smartphones or cellular phones. So
Right.
we visited areas when we were at Bush Radio that were, maybe 10, 15 miles outside of the city center where you have the beautiful skyscrapers and people clubbing in the downtown Cape Town with Victoria Harbor, which is one of the most stunning places I've ever seen. And you go out into the countryside and there's people that are living in shipping containers. I mean, it's like that. It's really was quite eye opening to see it. And their major source of information was the community radio station, which was a 2-bay antenna 60 feet above the ground on top of a tower that, maybe it had been inspected recently, maybe it hadn't, but it was that essential of a service that everybody knew the players, everybody knew the DJs, everybody was listening because that's how they got their news. That's how they got their entertainment. They were just listening to the radio. So that organization, those organizations are monitored by an organization called Centec, which is that's the South African broadcasters group that kind of like our FCC that makes sure that the station licenses are being taken into compliance and that this programming is by the book. But I learned something very interesting. That our friends at Bush Radio told me that they were the first community licensed station to be put on the air, and that this was back in right after the end of apartheid in the early '90s. They fought for that license as a pirate radio station, and they could tell you crazy stories about the battles they went through to stay on the air. I mean, they were building pirate transmitters. They were driving around in a van. The station was called Cassette at the time, and people actually were imprisoned for trying to broadcast. So they take their right to broadcasting very, very seriously. It's not just something they do for fun. They know it's an essential service, and they know that people are listening. So as a South African broadcaster, you can bet that when you work with a station like Bush Radio, I mean, you have to be at the top of your game. Even if it's just doing a show for fun on the weekends, they still know the rules. They still respect the rules. And most importantly, what we found is they respect the craft of what they're doing. It's really quite impressive. But if
I like that. They respect the craft. I like that.
Yes. Outlook. It's like a religion. It's more like a religion than anything else.
So I found some information online. See if this sentence comports with what you saw to be true about South Africa. Community stations in particular enjoy low-power FM licenses and reserved spectrum, fostering local voices alongside large commercial groups. It says here that their regulatory ICASA's independent status and regular license calls keep entry barriers comparatively low and encourage pluralism. Is that accurate or not what you found?
Oh yes, no, that's very accurate. There are a lot of community stations in South Africa, and the nice thing is that the community stations, at least from what we saw, I mean, this might not be universal. Well, at least in Cape Town, the community stations had this mission of working together. They were, in many cases, sharing resources, especially engineering resources. They were utilizing a lot of the same people. They were sharing information. If they had facility issues, they were sharing facilities. Because it came from, again, that broadcasting mission that this is an essential service and this is something the community needs. It was more than like this is something we do because we like it. It was, we need to do it because this is what has to be done. So yeah, we found there was an incredible diversity of community broadcasters. I mean, right in this one section of Salt River, which is where Bush Radio studios were, Bush Radio was at one end of the block, and then there was the Voice of Islam a couple of buildings down, and they were serving the Muslim community of Cape Town. The station we visited out in Mitchell's Plain, which was again another low power station. That was a station that again they had an educational program. They were providing services, community services that were not limited to broadcasting. They were providing information about health and human services, ways to access resources. And that was just a very small sampling of what we saw while we were there. So you multiply that, exponentially, and you can really see a thriving broadcast culture in a country that is a relatively young democracy and is not only enjoying their freedom of communication, but flexing their muscles as a community pretty intensely. I mean, these guys take this incredibly seriously. I would encourage anybody who has any question about the commitment of South African community broadcasters to speak to Brenda Leonard, the general manager, station manager of Bush Radio in Cape Town, and ask her about what happens when people try to challenge those freedoms. She will tell you the story of what they did to fight to get access to the FM band, what they've done to protect their access to the FM band, and what they're planning for the future to make sure that those freedoms and liberties are not taken away by the government. It's really impressive. They're a pretty tough group. Let's put it this way: I wouldn't mess with them.
We're talking to Andy Gladding, Dr. Andy Gladding, and he is a station owner, responsible for a New York radio station as well in terms of engineering, and he teaches broadcasting topics and recording topics at Hofstra University. I'm Kirk Harnack. It's This Week in Radio Tech. So we've talked about several countries that have reasonably positive outlooks and rules about broadcasting. When we come back, I want to touch on the country of Rwanda. I was under the impression that Rwanda was doing a lot of positive things in terms of education and creative content education. But when I'm reading a summary here of Rwanda's broadcasting rules and the situation on the ground, I'm a little disappointed. But we're going to get to that in a minute, plus some other countries, and eventually back to our freedoms here in the good old USA. Hey, our show is brought to you in part by my friends at Angry Audio. The website, angryaudio.com. And Angry Audio has a line of products that we've been familiar with for 20 plus years now, and that is Studio Hub. You know, when radio systems decided to close their doors some years ago, Mike Dosh stepped up and said, I'll buy that. The industry needs Studio Hub. And Studio Hub, it's the easy way to wire up analog connections, AES EBU connections as well, and headphone and mic connections too. Studio Hub makes wiring your studio go just about as easily as wiring a computer network. Click, click. You get great, balanced audio connections, whether it's analog or whether it's AES EBU digital. And of course, the most popular thing that they have in Studio Hub, at least what I use all the time, are these adapters and cables. Almost anything to anything. You got male XLR to RJ45, female XLR to RJ45. You've got a single one that's typically for AES EBU, although it could be for left channel mono. And then you've got adapters that have both a male and a female. There's certain uses for that. For example, like on a old-fashioned POTS telephone hybrid, that can help you out a lot. RCA connectors, it's just all kinds of things. Then they also have the kind that have the male RJ45 connector on the end of the cable, so you don't use a separate, Cat5 cable to complete the connection. You just, buy the cable as you want and run it from one place to another. I have built so many studios now using these Studio Hub adapters, these cable adapters. And man, I'll bet you I have used 300 of these things or maybe more over the years. Now, Studio Hub also has more along their line of products, including headphone amps. They have little amplifiers to go between unbalanced connections like RCA to a balanced connection. They also have SPDIF to AES EBU. On screen right now is this world connector, this world panel that you can connect anything to. It makes it easy for film crews, TV crews to come in, for you to bring an extra CD player in and hook it in there. So lots of possibilities there with Studio Hub. And I so often refer to the Studio Hub catalog at the angryaudio.com website. So if you need to wire a studio and you want to start doing it really smart, you can almost always leave the soldering iron in the case, because you can wire almost anything you need with Studio Hub adapters and simple and inexpensive Cat5 cables. Use shielded ones if at all possible, because that's part of the grounded standard. But check it out, Studio Hub from Angry Audio, the website angryaudio.com, and they're available for purchase through just about any broadcast equipment dealer. Now, be sure you ask for Studio Hub, because there are a couple of competitors out there on the market, and their volumes are much smaller. They really don't have the technology to make the cables and adapters the good way that Studio Hub does. Trust me on that. You want Studio Hub. Thanks a lot, Angry Audio, for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. Hey, another sponsor is Max Connect. And I know I've been talking about it a lot, and I'm just going to continue because it's a product you need to know about when you need it. So a lot of people are trying out these FM audio processors that run in software. They can even run a lot of them will run on a Windows environment. And I've got a few of these running myself. Love them. Omnia SST is an example of this. It runs in Windows. You can make it uber reliable. I've got one that's been running for 3 years. And you also can get a product like Stereo Tool that runs in Windows, and that's one of the platforms. And there are others as well. But the problem when you run an FM processor in a PC in a Windows environment, how do you get the multiplex signal out? How do you get that unbalanced FM connection that goes to your exciter or goes to your 950 megahertz STL to shoot it out to the transmitter side? How do you get that? Well, the one really good way to do it, the one way that absolutely works and is guaranteed quality, is this U.192 box from Max Connect. It's an MPX USB sound card. It's specifically designed to connect to a computer, a PC, that's running one of these FM audio processors like Omnia SST or Stereo Tool or Breakaway One. And it connects via USB. It is absolutely wonderfully reliable. These are just terrific. It also gives you analog or AES digital audio in to your computer. So let's imagine, most of mine are on LiveWire. So that's how I get audio in. But if you need to get analog audio in or AES EBU digital in, that's built in to the U.192. And what comes out? Well, you get your composite stereo coming out. It's beautiful. It's clean. It's crisp. It is perfectly well taken care of. That is a fragile signal, and you need to keep it good. You can also get analog out and digital AES out from this box. The U.192 from Max Connect, it's designed and built by our friends at Angry Audio, so it's really well built. This will make your station sound great and will let you put to use a software audio processor. Check it out from Max Connect, the website, MAXXKONNECT, Max Connect. And you can buy it from most any of your favorite broadcast equipment dealers. Hey, it's Kirk Harnack. We are on This Week in Radio Tech. We're talking about freedoms of broadcasting in the USA and making a few comparisons with other countries. Love to see if there's things we can learn from other countries. We'll make that our next topic. But I was reading about Rwanda. So Dr. Andy Gladding is with us. And I was under the impression that Rwanda was making nice strides, and maybe they are, in terms of education for students, for content and performance, and that had to do with broadcasting and making movies and plays. But here's what I read. The Rwanda Broadcasting Agency, RBA, runs state-owned radio networks, while a 2013 media law established a Rwanda Media Commission to license private and community outlets. In principle, self-regulation and easier press card rules were meant to diversify voices, but in practice, however, authorities have accused critical online radio stations of genocide denial, curbed their reach, and tightened control over content that's deemed sensitive. Now, I'm not there. I don't know. This is just what I'm reading online. Andy, maybe you know about Rwanda. Maybe you know about some other country that you want to comment on where you can't say what you want to say on the air. It's too regulated. What do you think?
Well, look, I mean, this is an ongoing issue in countries that I would say have not totally enshrined what we consider to be sort of taken for granted First Amendment protections. We have taken for granted the ability to say what we want and express our character, whether it's ourself or a character we're creating over the air. And we got to remember that liberty does not exist in other places. A country like Rwanda that has shifting political forces and people, powers and forces in it that are trying to influence a mass audience with unified messaging, you're going to see that sometimes education is not convenient. And especially broadcast education is really inconvenient when you're trying to centralize messaging. I mean, the same thing, what's happening in countries like Rwanda, 20 years ago in the country of Venezuela, there was an incident where Chavez was going to be basically taken out of power by a shadow force. And the commercial broadcasters were all basically told ahead of the removal of Chavez by the opposing political party, look, don't even talk about it the next day. Don't mention it on the air. It's business as usual. maybe run a little flash thing about a change in leadership. Maybe say he took the day off from being president, and but don't talk about it. And everybody played ball except for the state-run media station. The state-run media station was showing the chaos at the Capitol as people were trying to figure out who was in charge, and then where Chavez had been kind of abducted to, and it was because those state media people had been trained with those standards and practices in broadcasting and educated as to what their rights were as broadcasters. They were able to actually make a case via the state that rather pesky, inconvenient Channel 6 state TV channel that Chavez had to be brought back. Whether you agree with it or you don't agree with the policy of the leader that was removed, the broadcasters knew they had a responsibility to get the correct messaging out. I think countries like Rwanda that are threatening the education of the broadcasters and removing people's understanding of what the craft of broadcasting is, it's going to do a disservice later on. You might. It's very penny wise and pound foolish, because yes, you're going to be able to silence the media for that message you want to try to restrict, but later on down the road, that same silencing and lack of understanding of the medium and craft, that might actually hurt you in the long run, because then you've got you've got a group of people that doesn't really understand what the rules are, and then maybe not even understand what your rules are that you're putting in. So it's important to take that example and look into see what the after effects are of that effect. Obviously, as a professor at university, I'm a firm believer in enforcing those standards and practices. At the same time, as we opened up with, as a practitioner of the craft, I will also, I don't want to say do what I'm told, but if the objective of the position is to get the audio or video from one place to the other, you do that too. There has to be a happy medium, though, of doing what's right and executing what the purpose of the broadcast is in the first place. So I think when you limit the education, when you limit the wholeness of the broadcaster, of the student, or the practitioner, it's not really going to bode well for the entire business or really stability of the messaging of any of the country's communications in the long run.
I think we're going to play a short game here. I'm going to be the game master because I have the answer, and I'm going to give you a clue and see if you can guess what country this is, because I sure couldn't. I would not have thought. I didn't know what to think about this country. I've met probably one or two people in my life from this country, but here's the clue. This country's 1998 law on media freedom and the 1992 Constitution explicitly prohibits censorship and state ownership in media. A healthy mix of public, commercial, and community radio has flourished under a largely hands-off regulatory authority, making this country one of Asia's more open broadcast landscapes. And I would not have thought that, but I wouldn't know either. Any idea what country that might be?
I thought you were going to give me a multiple choice. I mean, that's really tricky.
Okay. Multiple choice. Absolutely. Multiple choice. All right. Multiple choice. All right. Your choices are, your choices are Bangladesh, or South Korea, or Mongolia, or India.
I'm going to go with Mongolia because they have really good barbecue.
Oh, wow.
You figure a country with a thriving barbecue scene is probably also going to have a pretty good broadcasting scene, because broadcasters like barbecue.
Oh, my gosh. You got it. That's amazing. Good for you. Good for you. That doctorate degree's worth something, I can tell you right now.
Hey, listen, just don't ask me to perform surgery unless it's using Studio Hub connectors, which I'm going to be using. I have to do a shameless plug for Salem Media because we've been talking about everything else. I do have to talk about Salem. I love working for Salem because they let us really play with all the cool stuff, but they also use Studio Hub and Telos Axia hardware, which is so easy to set up. We've got a build coming up in a couple of weeks, and I'm really actually looking forward to it because it's snap in kind of stuff. And if any of the Salem folks are listening, thank you for letting us use Studio Hub and Telos Axia. It makes my life so much easier as a broadcast engineer. And Frank, you can send me my check in the mail later for the shameless plug.
Well, it's great to feel about your boss well enough to thank your boss, to thank your company for what they do. And I have to do the same thing for Telos. They've been just fantastic to me, and so many good things going on. Tell you what, we're going to run out of time before too long. Is there another country that you'd like to pontificate about before we return to the United States broadcasting scene?
Sure, I could tell you once again another one of my, Andy just visits a country and goes touring a radio station. I was in Ireland about 2 years ago, and I stumbled across a little tiny station just outside of Galway. I mean, we're talking maybe 5 watts horizontal on a telephone pole, at the top of the road. It was called Kinvera FM, and I got a chance to meet with the program director, station manager of Kinvera, Mick Kelly, for a little radio station that's first of all, they have a beautiful studio that overlooks this bay, the bay just south of Galway. So when you're
Oh,
doing radio or making
mhm.
radio in their studios, you're looking at the water. It's stunning. It's absolutely stunning. The
Oh,
town is really cute. But the other thing is that, again, taking their broadcast license very seriously. They have a committee that's making decisions. They're looking at the ways they can impact their community using their signal. And we're not talking about a large community. I think the population of the community was something like 1,500 people. A community that size, the listeners are really intimate with the radio station. I mean, they know everybody
oh,
because half of them are related to each other. And they were covering things like, oh, and I'm not going to insult the Irish audience here by trying to do an Irish listener, but it was literally things like, a boulder has fallen down right off of Kehoe Road. So make sure you don't take that pathway while you're taking your sheep out to change pastures. I mean, that's really what they were
wow.
doing with the radio station. At the same time, then they would play music to go along with it. So just insert, a new wave song about sheep somewhere in there, or the alarm, or anything like that, or
Or
you
a,
too.
a song about boulders and sheep. That would be really
Exactly.
that would hit the nail on the head. Yeah.
Which
So
kind of sounds
so
like any Irish community radio show. Boulders, sheep, and whiskey. It's the name of my new Irish cover band I'm starting. Boulders, sheep, and whiskey. No.
well, it's interesting because Ireland is one of the countries that I've been to along and visited some transmitter sites. Um, and Galway. I got to go to Galway. I spent the
Oh,
night there
what a
and
cool
visited some
place.
transmitter sites. Yeah, beautiful place. Uh, According to some online information, the Broadcasting Authority of Ireland (BAI) issues licenses for commercial, community, campus, and temporary radio services or analog on both analog and digital bands. Ireland couples that openness with a statutory code of practice on content and a freedom of information regime over BAI decisions. So you can look into how they decided. It's supposed to be very transparent, blending liberal entry with clear statutory guardrails and public interest obligations. Did that comport with what you saw?
Absolutely. And
Okay.
they're again, and I think they're also starting to kind of get their mojo with their diversity of broadcasting, because you are seeing more community stations popping up that are really focusing on at that hyper local community level in across the country, and it's nice to see that, because you don't realize, okay, people think Ireland, it's this one big country full of Irish people. Well, there's many, just like anywhere else in the world. The communities could change depending on what side of the hillside you're living on. Whole names of people and cultures and or customs and traditions will change. So it's nice to see those community broadcasters focusing on that and highlighting all those different micro communities of the country. I think it's terrific.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Tell you what. There's one more question I want to hit on before we take our last commercial break, and then we'll be back for a tip of the week from Andy Gladding. But the one question that I have at the moment before we take our break is, what broadcasting, either regulatory or workflow or cultural idea, have you seen elsewhere in the world that you would love to see us do in the U.S.? Again, whether that's a jurisdictional, a legislative thing, or whether it's just something that we just do because we want to be better broadcasters. What have you seen elsewhere that you'd like to see us do here?
All right, I saw the coolest thing at Bush Radio. They were doing homemade or listener made, or like, let's, those community groups, like like there'll be like a group of spinners, like the ladies that get together and spin on a Saturday and exchange stories of craft, or quilters. Well, there was a group like that tied in with Bush that was making listener promotional items for the station, and I thought it was so cool because the station was giving away items, or sometimes selling those items, and then the money would go back to help support the group that made them. And also then there was like another community cause involved. And one of the coolest things I saw were floor mats. All right. I know it's going to sound crazy, like a floor mat. Why would you want to stand on the logo of the item you're trying to promote? Well, think about when you walk into somebody's home. What's the first thing you do before you walk through the door? you look down to make sure you're not going to hit your foot on the sawbuck. So if you think about
Yeah.
that, every time somebody walks into that house, they're looking down and seeing a radio station logo on the doormat or the floor mat that the home they're walking into. So now you're connecting that station's logo with somebody's home. And I thought that was such a cool thing that you would have that connection between home and radio and your station's brand. I thought that was so cool. And also, you can't not look at it because you have to look down. You don't want to trip and go flailing into somebody's home. It's just not good form.
In the U.S., I'm sure some people have made sweaters with call letters. When I was in high school, I just started working at a little AM daytimer, WKXO, in Berea, Kentucky. And in shop class, we were actually melting metal and making whatever we want with casting things. And I cast a belt buckle that said WKXO, wow. And it was accurately. I don't know how I made it. I forgot, but it was in their exact logo, which was some rather unique looking not script but font, and it was great. It worked until the hook broke off and I couldn't put it in the hole anymore. So
that's when you just get duct tape. Get a little gaffer's tape. No problem. They'll solve that problem.
All right, we got one more break. Andy, when we come back, we got time for a tip of the week, or if you'd like to extol some of the virtues that we do have here. And one thing, daggone it, we just haven't got enough time. Some of the things that they do in other countries, we might feel uncomfortable doing just because they may be a good idea, like the listener created promotional items, but we're so influenced by corporate radio, by the way things are done here, that we almost just fall into it. We just fall into it. And that's fine, but it requires the least amount of thinking. And maybe it stifles creativity. So maybe you got thoughts along those lines. Our show This Week in Radio Tech is brought to you in part by our friends at Broadcasters General Store. BGS.cc is the website. And let's talk about something that's really going to help you involve your listeners on the air like you should be, and that's Vox Pro.
Hey, what's happening? St. John here, coming to you from Command Central, and wanted to tell you about the absolute best partner you can have in radio. I'm talking about, boom, Wheatstone's Vox Pro. Now, a lot of folks have used previous versions of Vox Pro, all awesome, but I want to tell you about some of my favorite new features in 7. And for folks who've never used Vox Pro before, I'm about to tell you why it's an absolute game changer and essential for really fast-paced multi-element radio. Lots of different audio software out there. Why Vox Pro? Because it was designed for radio. It's the only software designed to do what we needed to do, which is record, edit, playback in real time. When I say lightning fast, I'm going to show you how fast you can edit stuff up in Vox Pro right now. So literally 3 clicks on the controller, mark left, mark right, everything that gets marked, you hit delete, it goes away. It's literally that fast. So we're going to take this part right here. Boom. From caller 9 to him saying, I'm ready.
Ready for that secret sound.
Boom. All of that stuff, hit delete, it goes away. Here's your edit.
You are tackling secret sound, caller 9.
I'm ready, St. John.
So one of the best features of version 7, this is awesome. It's effects macros, and you can literally put a chain of effects together so that instead of having to normalize a phone bit and then use noise reduction on it and EQ it and all that, you can literally build a chain. One button, this one's called call right here. I just click that. All of those processes happen instantaneously. Literally saves 80% of your editing and cleanup time. Final thing that I love about Vox Pro, and there's so much more to get into, but one of my favorite things, you can load it on a laptop. I've literally done my show from a hotel room in Armenia to the conference room at, this was fun, jury duty. Great thing, no one could tell the difference. Vox Pro makes it totally easy. Telling you, if you're looking for the best on-air partner, call my friends at Wheatstone, ask them about Vox Pro, and you will be glad you did.
I think St. John understands broadcasting freedom when you can do your show from jury duty. It's available from Broadcasters General Store, the website bgs.cc. I'll tell you, their website just keeps getting better and better. It's easy to find stuff there. They got a great search tool. And importantly, if you call them or email them or whatever, you can, they got sharp pencils and friendly smiles and voices, and you're just going to love the folks at Broadcasters General Store. I've been buying equipment from them for, oh my goodness, has it been 40 years? It might be close to that. Thanks a lot, Broadcasting General Store, for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. Andy, we're almost out of time. Dr. Andy Gladding's our guest, talking about the freedoms of broadcasting in America, contrasting that with a couple other countries. Andy, you thankful for something? You got a tip for us? What would you like to close out by leaving us with something valuable?
Yes. I think my tip of the week is going to be talking about a shift in mentality. I think too often, especially when it comes to radio, we've been used to competing with other radio stations. But in this day and age, radio stations should not be looking to compete with each other. Radio stations, especially local market radio stations, should look to be working together. Because as we know, the money has diversified. Money that used to just go to radio and TV and print, now a large line share of it goes to digital marketing. So if there are other stations in your market, and that's not just other commercial operators, but community operators and educational operators, take a moment to see how you can use your resources to collaborate with another operator. You might say, why would I want to work with my competitor? Or why would I want to work with a bunch of college students? Or why would I want to work with a community radio station? Well, guess what? The more places that you can get your brand out, and the more places you can get your voice heard, and if you offer that same spirit of collaboration to a competitor or another group that's broadcasting, that fosters a spirit of collaboration that can naturally help both parties grow. We've seen it in New York with the SB Chapter 15, with extending olive branches to different universities to provide pathways for students looking to get into commercial media. That's worked very well because it provides training opportunities, and it's great for the students. They get to learn from pros. It's great for the pros because they also get to learn from the students. A lot of times we think as adults that we know better than the students might know. Well, guess what? If you're running a top 40 station, you have a 22-year-old come in, the 22-year-old might tell you your terminology is wrong, or the songs you're playing are not hitting properly. They might actually help you. That's not just limited to top 40. If it's AAA, you might find out that you're not hitting the younger generation because you don't have younger people working for you. If you're trying to reach community and you're not getting the impact you're looking for, reach out to a community station because they may be able to provide you with programming that diversifies your content, either musically or from a spoken word perspective, that you would not be able to produce in-house. A community station might have the resources to work with you to get you content that's compelling to the community and helps complement your music programming. So I think in 2025, we need to look at collaboration in the local radio model, whether it's for educational collaboration or for crosstown collaboration, as a key to growth and survival. And I think that's one of the things I've seen now, being on all the sides of this triangle of radio: the commercial side, the major market side, the educational side, and the international side, is that collaboration amongst broadcasters and what we think of as our competitors, our enemies in this case, may really actually be our friends. So that's my tip of the week. Make a friend with your competitor, and maybe you guys can do something together.
Really interesting, insightful, and yes, we radio people need to be promoting radio and what radio can do for communities. It is interesting that sometimes it takes maybe a natural disaster or something bad happening in a community that affects a lot of people, or even just one family, for radio to become important. And in 1993, we had this terrible ice storm in Mississippi, and our station turned out to be the only one for out of 50 or 60 miles still on the air. And we had people bringing us generators and food, and we ended up opening up a suite next to ours and using it as a collection point for blankets and baby diapers and formula and stuff like that. And that put our little station on the map at that point, made us important to the community because,
Wow.
Oh man, we were 24/7 helping people out, and some people didn't have electricity for 6 weeks after that.
Wow.
Well,
That's
yeah,
unbelievable.
it's a big thing. But hey, I love your advice, Andy. Dr. Andy Gladding, thank you for being with us. I'm glad you weathered the storm. Looks like you're just about in the clear now. A little bit of rain.
So
left.
yeah, the craziest thing, in the middle of our broadcast, there were chunks of hail falling from the sky, Kirk. I'm in my off-top Jeep Wrangler. I thought a chunk of hail was going to come through. At one point, I even ran over to my little shed there, but I couldn't go inside because the air conditioning compressor was on. I have somebody renting my house for the weekend, so I can't go run inside. The air conditioning compressor was on, and I said, well, I'm not going to, it's too noisy in here. So I came back out to the car. So, but as you know, as a broadcast engineer, we're like the U.S. Postal Service. Neither rain nor sleet nor snow or hail will prevent me from getting a broadcast on the air. That's how we roll, baby.
Oh man, Hey, I've enjoyed it. Andy, great to talk with you for the last hour. We got to go. Suncast has appointments and things to do, and we do too. So thanks very much, Dr. Andy Gladding from New York, and he's talking to us from Walton, New York. Hey, big thanks to Suncast, our producer for the show. I hope you join us next week. We'll be talking with an engineer from the West Coast. Awesome engineer named Chuck Bullitt. He's on next week. So we'll see you next week on This Week in Radio Tech.